Take a look at this picture. In your opinion, is A more genetically related to A1 or A2? A here represents the archetypal modern East Asians. A1 represents a broad clade of people classified as the Negritos, while A2 represents an average person from the Caucasus Mountains. The answer is A is genetically significantly closer to A1. Let's do another one. Is B more closely related to B1 or B2? B here represents a broad amalgamation of the features of the people in mainland Southeast Asia. B1 represents an arbitrary grouping of people living around the Mediterranean, while B2 represents the archetypal Papuan and Australian Aborigines people. Yes, you guessed it, B is significantly more related to B2 than B1. I'm making a series of videos presenting in lay terms the peopling of East, Southeast, and South Asia. This area is receiving significant revision in recent years due to modern genetics, technology, and techniques shining new light on older archaeological evidences. Why do I do this, you may ask? Well, don't we all want to know where we came from? I just happen to be interested in a much longer time scale than most people do. And more importantly, by sharing, it forces me to examine my own knowledge. As the philosopher Seneca once said, as we teach, we learn. Most importantly, perhaps, is that the story of the peopling of Asia contains considerable surprises, connecting all of us much more deeply than our outward differences would have you thought, especially for a country so torn by polarized racial and religious narratives. The story of our ancestors requires us to examine our prejudices and preconceptions. So let's start. Our story begins in the initial Upper Paleolithic, 70 to 60,000 years ago. One group of individuals, no greater in number than a few hundred, crossed the Red Sea and settled the Arabian Peninsula. Now, this group of people is not the only group to have left Africa, but this group is significant because the people of Asia, Europe, Australia, and the Americas all have their ancestry in one lineage traceable to this group of individuals, with others either contributing negligible amount or completely none at all of their genetic markers to modern people. This initial group would split into two: the ancient East Eurasian and the ancient West Eurasian. We will follow the journey of the ancient East Eurasian because this lineage leads us to the Asiatic people today. By 60 to 50,000 years ago, this ancient East Eurasian population would have reached the subtropical region of northeast India. This region must have been a good place to live for these early hunter-gatherers because their population would experience a boom and as a result split into three separate groups. Now pay attention to this group as this is vital to the understanding of all the ethnic groups in Malaysia today. The first group split off, moved south into southern India, forming what we call in genetic studies today the Ancient Ancestral South Indians, AASI. The modern people of India carry somewhere between 30 to 70% of this AASI people's ancestry, depending on where they are from, with those from the south carrying more and those from the north carrying less. I will devote a video or two to the peopling of India, but for now we will follow the footsteps of the other two groups. The second group went further east and then turning south into Southeast Asia. eventually finding themselves crossing into Papua New Guinea and Australia, forming the modern Papuans and Aboriginal Australians. Modern scholarship puts the arrival date to somewhere between 60 to 40,000 years ago. Of note, of course, is that one separate branch of this lineage, instead of going south into Papua and Australia, went back north after entering Southeast Asia, becoming the Aita people of the Philippines today. The third group, similar to the second group, went into Southeast Asia. But instead of going further south and onwards to Australia and Papua, they stayed in mainland Southeast Asia, forming what we call the Basal East Asian people, or BEA, 50,000 years ago. This group of people leaves a scattering of modern descendants throughout Asia, like the Andamanese, the Semang, and the Manik of Malaya and southern Thailand. While their population today is small and limited, once upon a time these people were numerous throughout Asia, with past population like the Huabinian of Southeast Asia and Tianyuan of northeast China. By 20,000 years ago, some descendants of this BEA, Basal East Asian, has split into two distinct groups of people in what is today mainland China. Group 1, the Ancient Northern East Asian, ANEA. And Group 2, the Ancient Southern East Asian, ASEA. The children of these people, both this group, would go on and populate the entirety of East Asia, Southeast Asia, and Central Asia, forming 1/3 of all human population today. We will focus first on the Ancient Northern East Asian, the ANEA. This ANEA would then further divide into three subgroups. Subgroup number 1, at the very north, the Neo-Siberians, which are associated with the people of East Siberia today, like the Yakuts and the Evenki. Subgroup number 2, the Amur ancestry. This ancestry contributes significantly to modern Mongolians and Manchurians. This is also associated with languages like the Mongolic languages and the Tungus language family, spoken by the Manchurians. Subgroup 3, the southernmost of the ancient northern East Asian, is called the Yellow River ancestry. These people and their children would build millet farming communities along the Yellow River about 10,000 years ago, eventually coalescing into an empire that we call China today. This ancestry is also associated with the Sino-Tibetan language family, with its speakers not only spreading throughout what is today China, but also went west into Tibet and south into Myanmar. The other group that emerged 20,000 years ago in the mountainous region of southern China, the Ancient Southern East Asian, the ASEA. These people are associated with modern speakers of Austroasiatic language, the Kradai, the Hmong-Mien, and the Austronesian languages. Of particular note is that the Austroasiatic people spread farming through overland route to Southeast Asia, resulting in isolated population in Southeast Asia today speaking Austroasiatic languages. While the second wave of migration into Southeast Asia was led by the Austronesians through the sea route, forming the majority of the population of maritime Southeast Asia today. In fact, the migration of the ancient Southern East Asians into Southeast Asia was so recent that the Chinese records interaction with various Baiyue tribes as late as 1,600 years ago. Those remaining in southern China has since been sinicized into the greater Chinese population, leaving pockets of Thai Kradai, Hmong-Mien, and Austroasiatic speakers in southern China, while Austronesian speakers completely vanished from the mainland, leaving only a remnant population in Taiwan. This assimilation can be seen from the modern Han Chinese genetic makeup, with considerable ancient Southeast Asian admixture, marked by the dark grey in a gradient from less in the north to more in the south. But this admixture is also reflected in the migrating Southeast Asians as well, with Yellow River ancestry forming 20 to 50% of modern Southeast Asians today, regardless of linguistic affinity. What this shows us is that all the different races in Malaysia, in fact, all the different races in Southeast Asia, is much more connected than our outward differences might suggest. And debating who came first really fails to capture the enormity of the timelines of the movement of people in this part of the world. Put yourself in the shoes of an ancient Southern East Asian from Liangzhu culture near modern-day Shanghai, who probably looked somewhat like this. He kept his hair short, he tattooed his face and blackened his teeth, he built houses on stilts, and his children would board a catamaran, perhaps, to inhabit islands we call Philippines, Borneo, and the Malay archipelago today. Wouldn't he find it hilarious that his children and his Yellow River neighbors' children, both of which now carries his genetic markers, are bickering about who came first in a place his ancestors lived 40,000 years earlier?